Hello, cruel world. My name is Dr. Shahan Das. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. You can call me the ominous Shahominous. This video is 5 myths about restraining orders, also known as protection orders. On top of that, within this video, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why the police might not arrest somebody for violating a restraining order. Plus, I'm going to give you, my Psych for Sore guys and gals, a quiz about the most bizarre, real reason that anybody has got a restraining order. Now, if you watch my videos, you know that I like to vajazzle you with some stats at the beginning of the episode. Is that the right word? Yeah, I'm sure it is. Believe it or not, so the most obvious question is how many restraining orders are doled out every year? And believe it or not, the statistics are not actually released. Ministry of Justice doesn't release them. The criminal justice system, the Crown Prosecution Service does not release those stats either. And my very extensive research couldn't reveal it either, by which I mean Google and Bing and Wikipedia. I even resurrected and asked Jeeves, and he didn't even know what a restraining order was, and he was a tiny bit racist. But according to the latest data from 2021 to 2022, the police recorded 813,000 domestic abuse related incidents. Obviously nothing funny about that in the UK, which is kind of highlighting the significant scale of the issue. And on top of that, I did find out that there were about 10.8 thousand prosecutions and about 8.1 thousand convictions for breaching a non-molestation order in England and Wales. So that's actually breaching it, not getting it in the first place. So what I'm saying is around 15 to 20% of non-molestation orders get breached in the UK. So there you go. I got you some stats. Consider yourself vajazzled. Let's get into it. Myth number 1, restraining orders are the same as stalking orders. There's actually a difference between restraining orders and stalking orders. It's a common misconception that they're the same thing, just like psychologists versus psychiatrists, or sociopaths versus psychopaths, or veggie sausages versus cardboard. I've actually got a video about the difference between sociopaths and psychopaths. It's one of my best videos, I think. I'll put the links in the description. Go chiggity check it out. So stalking orders, to me, are a bit like diet restraining orders. So they're not quite as serious, not quite as severe, and they specifically address the behaviour of stalking, which involves repeated unwanted contact or surveillance that causes the victim fear or distress. Whereas restraining orders are protecting the individual from a broader range of harmful behaviour, including physical assaults, threats, harassment, intimidation, and that can include specific kind of situations like harassment, neighbourly disputes, or situations involving children, otherwise known as custody disputes. Speaking of neighbourly disputes, I've actually got an entire video about a real life person, a friend of mine, Isla Traquois, who was a victim of stalking that started from a neighbourly dispute. She had to go to the police. It was a horrific story. She's a very brave individual, speaks very eloquently. We were both a guest on Steph's packed lunch, RIP. So I'll put the links in that video. I also give you 5 tips of how to deal with stalkers. So restraining orders typically demonstrate or need to demonstrate a history of abuse or threats from the restrained individual towards the protected person, whereas the bar for a stalking order is much lower than a restraining order. So as I said, it doesn't have to be as serious. All you need for a stalking order is evidence of a pattern of unwanted contact that causes fear or distress, even if there's no history of physical violence. In terms of the things they have in common, both restraining orders and stalking orders include limitations on contact, so either in person or phone calls or messages, and also proximity, so nearness, physical nearness. You have to stay away from certain locations where the victim works, where the victim lives, the local Wetherspoons that they frequent. But the stalking order is not just for stalking, it's not just about proximity, or it can be about that. It's also about stalking behaviour like taking photos. So you get the difference? You can take photos from a distance. So, am I allowed to go to the summer fair if I know Juliet is going to be there, officer? Yeah, but stay out of her way, Romeo. Am I allowed to attend Wetherspoons for Eggs Benedict for less than a £5, officer? Yeah, but Juliet also goes there, so stay away from her table. Am I allowed to buy Juliet flowers, serenade her, and write her a love letter in blood, officer? No, Romeo, you're being creepy again. Get in the police car. Moving on, myth number 2 about restraining orders is that restraining orders are the same as non-molestation orders. So non-molestation orders, just to make things even more complicated with stalking orders, etc., are a special type of restraining order issued in civil courts, but they're primarily for domestic violence situations. So they specifically focus on harassment from a partner or ex-partner. Kind of going off on a tangent here, but just a statistic that I read up on recently, around 11% of female murders are by strangers, and about 40% of female murders in the UK recently are by ex-partners or a current partner. So I'm just kind of highlighting how frequent it is, contrary to popular belief, sadly, that women get killed by, people they're in a relationship with or have been in a relationship with. Okay, moving on. Myth number 3 about restraining orders is that restraining orders are only for physical abuse. So they can actually be sought for various forms of abuse: physical, obviously, emotional, verbal, psychological, and, as I said before, stalking. So I'm going to give you a quick list of some specific behaviours that are non-violent where you can get a restraining order. Example number 1, non-violent action for restraining order is harassment. So you might think, what's the difference between harassment and stalking? They're similar, but they're not the same. So harassment can encompass unwanted, repeated contact or behaviour, but here's the difference. Harassment can be motivated by anger or by revenge or by discrimination or just the specific intent to annoy somebody, whereas stalking is unwanted romance. So same, but different. Example number 2 of behaviour that's non-violent that can lead to a restraining order is breach of privacy. So prevent somebody from sharing private information about a person without their consent. So specifically that could be something like revenge porn or just like an online harassment or campaign of hate. Situation number 3, where you can have a non-violent reason for having a restraining order, could be neighbourly disputes. So restraining orders might be preventing a neighbour, for example, playing loud music at an unreasonable hour, because face it, nobody wants to hear your Backstreet Boys compilation at 2 a.m. It ain't happening. Okay, moving on. Obviously, domestic violence is a very serious topic and it's nothing to laugh about, but I do kind of have the sense of humour of a 13-year-old. So a quick quiz for you, my Psych for Soul guys. I'm going to tell you 3 stories, bizarre stories about restraining order, and I want you to tell me which one is the truth and which 2 are fabricated. Let me know in the comment section. I'll give you the answer at the end of this episode. See if you can write the answer down before you hear it from me. Okay, so bizarre story number 1. Obsessed Elvis impersonator. In 2007, a woman in Florida obtained a restraining order against an Elvis impersonator who would repeatedly serenade her outside her home, sometimes multiple times per day, in a persistent attempt to win her affection. True or false? Pigeon-loving landlord. In 2016, a tenant in California received a restraining order from his landlord after the landlord became increasingly fixated on feeding pigeons, which the tenant was allergic to. So the landlord would allegedly leave large amounts of birdseed outside this tenant's door, creating a health hazard and unpleasant living conditions. And I imagine a whole load of bird shit. So true or false? Story number 3, singing gas station attendant. In 2019, a man in Texas was granted a restraining order against a gas station attendant who would insist on singing karaoke style whenever the man came to pump gas. And this unwanted singing caused the man a significant amount of distress and anxiety. As I said, answers later on in this episode. Okay, moving on. Myth number 4. Come on, we're on the home stretch. You can do it. Get your back into it. Myth number 4, once a restraining order is granted, the abuser will automatically be arrested if they violate it. Even though violation of a restraining order is a criminal offence in most jurisdictions, there are several reasons why police might not arrest somebody for violating it. So here are 5 reasons why that might be the case. It's like a video inside a video. It's a bit like Inception. I'm Tom Hardy and you're Elliot Page. Oh, don't cancel me, please. Okay, reason number 1 why police might not arrest somebody if they breach restraining order is lack of evidence. So the police need sufficient evidence to believe that a violation has occurred in the first place. Ideally, that could be somebody witnessing the violation firsthand, or the police seeing it firsthand, or documented proof. So if one of the restrictions was text messages, you could read the text messages when somebody's not allowed to contact somebody else, GPS tracking, etc., etc. So lack of that is a reason for not arresting somebody. Reason number 2 why somebody might not be arrested for breaching a restraining order is unclear or ambiguous violations. So even though some boundaries are clear, some are not. So if there's an ambiguous grey area, then the police might not have enough grounds to arrest them. So say Bill is hiding behind Hillary's house wearing a Big Mac and he's got an erection and it's caught on CCTV, that's obvious. But say in another set of circumstances, it's a summer's day and Bill is in the only park in the village and Hillary happens to be there, but half the town is there as well, less clear, the police might not have the grounds to arrest. Reason number 3 why police might not arrest somebody on a restraining order is that they might do de-escalation and an alternative approach. So in some cases, they might not think it was that serious a breach, so the police might choose to de-escalate the situation, ensuring that all parties are safe, and use a verbal warning or mediation before resorting to arrest. And again, this approach might be taken if the violation appears to be unintentional, if it's unclear, if it's potentially a misunderstanding. Reason number 4 why the police might not arrest somebody who has just breached a restraining order is the victim's decision. So the victim might decide not to press charges. Even if the police have grounds for an arrest, the police might not proceed. Reason number 5 why the police might let somebody get off with a breach of a restraining order is insufficient resources or higher priorities. So the police might think that there's a low perceived urgency and severity of this situation. They might actually be overburdened at that moment in time with other calls that they need to respond to immediately, which they might think are more important. So they could be like an armed robbery at the post office, there could be a car chase on the M25, or it could be happy hour at Dunkin' Donuts. Okay, before we move on, I would like to know your stories, my Schmike for Schmall guys. Let me know in the Schmike section below. Do you know anybody that's been on a restraining order or has had one put out against somebody dangerous? Have you had experience that yourself? Genuinely intrigued to know your experiences. Let me know in the Schmike section. Okay, almost there. Myth number 5, and this is a bizarre one, I have to say. You cannot live with the abuser if you have a restraining order against them. Believe it or not, in some cases, restraining orders can be modified to allow shared living arrangements with specific safety measures in place. Now, it sounds weird, but there are specific scenarios like shared child custody. So if you share children with the restrained individual, say an abusive ex-partner, the court might grant specific exemptions or exceptions to the order to facilitate supervised visits or shared parenting agreements, which usually involve third-party supervision just to keep everyone safe. So in really rare instances, separate to childcare issues, if the dwelling has separate living spaces with minimal shared areas, the court might consider allowing separate living arrangements. For example, say these two people are very poor and they have no other options, nowhere else they could live, like literally can't afford it, no other social housing available. Then they can live in the same building, believe it or not, with strict limitations on contact, clear boundaries. But as I said, this is very, very rare. The courts are very cautious and they're reluctant to agree this, obviously for risk reasons. So it's only ever considered as a last resort. So the point I'm trying to make is it's exceptionally rare, like a 4-leaf clover or a double rainbow or an entertaining Dr. Grande video. Oh no, he didn't. Okay. So I asked you before, my Psych for Schmall guys and gals, I gave you 3 stories about bizarre situations, crazy stories, where somebody got a restraining order. They were the obsessed Elvis impersonator, pigeon-loving landlord, singing gas station attendant. Which one of them is true? Before I answer that, I'm going to introduce you to this channel. It's a Schmike for Schmall Minds. There's me, Dr. Shahom Das. You can call me the ominous Shahominous. I do a range of videos about offending and mental illness and the crossover between the two. Recently, I've done videos on 5 myths about female prison. I've done 5 myths on murderers. Go chiggity, check them out. I implore you to subscribe. Not only does it help me out immeasurably, but if you subscribe, you will never be ignored at the bar when you're waiting ages to get your pint and everybody seems to be jumping ahead of you. That won't happen ever again. If you subscribe, guaranteed or your money back. Okay. So, which of those 3 stories was a true bizarre reason why somebody actually got a restraining order? Obsessed Elvis impersonator, pigeon-loving landlord, singing gas station attendant. Come on, y'all. You know my steeds, you know my style. It was a trick question. They are all true, actual, real-life stories. One thing that occurred to me is that all 3 of these happened to occur in America, That's just a coincidence. I'm in no way insinuating anything negative about my American brethren. I would never do that. I have the utmost respect for the USA. So please don't come to London, supersize all our meals and invade us looking for oil. Just kidding, America. You know I love you. All right, before I say goodbye, let's summarize what we learned today, kids. We learned that restraining orders are often quite breached on a regular basis. We know that there's lots of different types of restraining orders, that they're not only for violence. We know that you love the Blackstreet Boys, and we learned that there's many reasons why a breach of a restraining order doesn't lead to an arrest. I've banged on long enough. You need to get on with your day. You've got more important things to do than to listen to a fool like me. But do not forget before you go, buy my book, plus I love you.